So the tariff war, or whatever you want to call it, the tariff struggle between the U.S. and China is at a halt. Kind of big news today. So Trump and the Chinese delegates, I guess, I don't know, they met in Switzerland or something to discuss, and they put a little stay on it, a little 90-day stay, the kind of thing they did with the Canada U.S. one. But obviously, this one's a much bigger one. I'm going to read this. This is the BBC. Let's see what they have to say about this. So, what does U.S. China tariff deal mean? The U.S. and China have agreed to a truce to lower import taxes on goods being traded between the two countries. The agreement marks a major de escalation of the trade war between the world's two biggest economies, which has sent shockwaves impacting countless other countries, including the UK. Both the U.S. and China have confirmed a reduction in the tariffs they imposed on each other following the initial escalation by President Donald Trump earlier this year. The deal involves both nations canceling some tariffs altogether and suspending others for 90 days by May 14th, which is 2 days from now. The result is that the additional U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports, that's the extra tariffs imposed in the recent standoff, will fall from 145% to 30%, while recently hiked Chinese tariffs on some U.S. imports will fall from 125% to 10%. China has also halted and scrapped other non-tariff countermeasures, such as the export of crucial minerals to the U.S., which it put in place in response to the initial escalation. The U.S. measures still include an extra 20% component aimed at putting pressure on Beijing to do more to curb the illegal trade in fentanyl, powerful opioid drug. The announcement came after the two countries held talks in Switzerland, the first between the two countries since Trump sparked the latest tariff war. So after the 90 days, trying to predict the next steps in this ongoing trade war between the U.S. and China these past few months has been difficult to say the least. But this is a major agreement between the world's two powerhouse economies and has been broadly welcomed. Even if the suspended tariffs are reinstated after 90 days because the vast majority of the tariffs that were announced after Liberation Day have been canceled, U.S. tariffs on China would only rise to 54%, and Chinese tariffs on the U.S. would rise to 34%. So you can see that it's either way, it's a massive win, especially if that somehow directly affects you. Now, people are worried about these tariffs like crazy, but it doesn't. It while it directly affects you, it's more of an indirect effect. Maybe it'll raise the price on something marginally. You probably won't even notice on a lot of different things, but but if you're directly involved with this somehow, your business or maybe your business uses something that the U.S. imports from China, well, and perhaps it really affected you. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the consensus from both countries was that neither side wants a decoupling, while China's Commerce Ministry said the agreement was a step to lay the foundation to bridge differences and deepen cooperation. So here we go. So here's basically some of the reason why Trump has these tariffs in place against China. So in 2024, the biggest category of goods exported from the U.S. to China were soybeans, primarily used to feed China's estimated 440 million pigs. That's a nasty way to. Nah. I was gonna say something mean there. I'll relent. The U.S. also sent pharmaceuticals and petroleum. Meanwhile, China exported large volumes of electronics, computers, and toys. The biggest category of U.S. imports from China is smartphones, accounting for 9% of the total. A large proportion of these smartphones, Apple iPhones, made in China. However, the U.S. buys much more than China, 440 billion, than it sells to it, 145 billion, which is something Trump has long been unhappy with. That's what he's talking about, the trade deficit. So he's saying that, it's a $300 billion trade deficit because the U.S. is buying a ton more from China than China's buying from the U.S. So he's trying to do what he can to even that out. His reasoning in part for introducing tariffs and higher ones on countries which sell more to the U.S. than they buy is to encourage U.S. consumers to buy more American-made goods, increase the amount of tax raised, and boost manufacturing jobs. Excuse me. He's always been about that. In his first term, he was the same thing. It was always about getting manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. So, he's very consistent. The escalating trade war in recent months has led to a collapse in the amount of goods being shipped across the Pacific Ocean, but investors believe the truce will lead to a rebound with shares up for some of the world's biggest shipping firms. So here's the top 5 imports and exports, basically. So U.S. exports to China, soybeans 9%, aircraft and engines 8%, Integrated circuits 4%, pharmaceuticals 4%, and petroleum 3%. And China exports to the U.S. smartphones 9%, laptops 7%, batteries 3%, toys 2%, and telecoms equipment 2%. You notice all those top five have something in common. It's it's the little Asian eyes at the working real close to the electronics and stuff, as the memes go. I'm not gonna read any of the rest of this, but yeah. So I mean, realistically, it's a good thing. I think this was always the aim. He was always trying to make a deal, and people will say, "Oh, well, China won," or whatever. Or Trump relented, but that wasn't. It wasn't what it was about. What people don't understand is this is a shakeup. It's a way for the U.S. to now get to the negotiation table with a country that probably wasn't willing to get there. So I think it's a good thing. I don't know how you can view this as bad. I think this is a win all the way.